Good evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. I'm not sure how many folks may be watching at home on the local TV channel. I'm going to give it five up until 6:35 to get started. Thank you. Okay, good evening. For those of you watching at home, I'm going to get started now. This this year's annual town meeting is Saturday. This Saturday, May 17th. I'm sorry, not this Saturday, 2 Saturdays from now, on May 17th, 12:30 p.m. at the Nahant Town Hall. Check-in will start at 11 a.m. and the meeting will start at 12:30. The process of preparing for annual town meeting starts in December. So for the last 4 months or so, there's been multiple meetings, internally and public meetings, um, to get ourselves ready and prepared for the annual town meeting. We start by preparing the omnibus budget and seeking requests from departments in January. Citizen petitions and committee requests for warrant articles are due by the end of January 31st per our town charter. This year, we have no citizen petitions. Then through January, through April, from January to April, the Community Preservation Committee reviews and awards applications submitted for funds. The Board of Selectmen build the draft omnibus budget, develop the warrant, and submit it to the Finance Committee. Sometimes there'll be adjustments throughout this process. The Finance Committee will then develop the final omnibus budget and make the recommendations on the warrant articles. The Finance Committee book should have been delivered to your household by now. If not, it's available on nahant.org under annual town meeting. Unique in Nahant is that the warrant is constructed and controlled by the Board of Selectmen. However, the omnibus budget is actually the Finance and Advisory and Finance Committee's budget that town meeting votes on at town meeting. Well, we're going to start with the budget. This is the heart and center of town meeting. This is what the town meeting, the residents, registered voters who attend town meeting vote on the omnibus budget and essentially authorize the town to conduct business throughout the upcoming fiscal year. What we do to begin the development of the omnibus budget is we start by separating our revenues into two separate buckets, a general fund revenue bucket and a free cash revenue bucket. General fund revenue is used for operating expenses. It's generated in the same fiscal year as the expense, and it's mostly generated from property taxes, which are capped by Proposition 2.5. There's also local receipts and state aid. So funds that we generate starting July 1st will be used starting July 1st until June 30th of next year. What we do is we estimate what our revenue stream is going to look like for the upcoming fiscal year, and that is going to look for operating expenses, and we put those in the general fund revenue bucket. There's also the free cash revenue bucket. Free cash is not free. It is not cash. It is used for one-time expenses such as capital investment, reserves, or paying down debt. It's generated from a prior fiscal year. It's the actuals. So it's sum of under-expended appropriations and over-generated receipts. So the free cash that we're voting on May 17th for fiscal year 26 is actually revenue generated from fiscal year 24. So at the end of that fiscal year 24, we reconcile the budget. We look at how much money was actually spent compared to what was appropriated, and we look at how much revenue was generated compared to what we estimated. If we spent less money than we were appropriated, and if we generated more revenue than we estimated, those two numbers are combined, certified by the state as our free cash. And then we are able to vote on it at the upcoming annual town meeting for next fiscal year. Free cash I like to refer to it as a Christmas bonus. It's not something that you're going to get every year. You don't know how much you're going to get every year, so you don't want to spend it on something like a membership or an expense that's going to be an annual expense for you. It's a one-time revenue that you're going to spend on a one-time need. So we use a lot of it for one-time capital needs, like purchasing a vehicle or doing some sort of infrastructure project. We also use it to build up our reserves, which is like a savings account. Our stabilization account is one of those. Stabilization is an account that, as we build it up, it positively impacts our bond rating. Our bond rating is very similar to a person's credit score. The better our bond rating, the better interest rate we're going to get when we go out to loan money. And we also use free cash revenue to pay down debt in addition to our minimum required amount to pay in the upcoming year. Back to general fund revenue, we look at fiscal year 25 and we project fiscal year 26. As you can see from this slide, our general fund revenue increased around $554,000. On the free cash side or in the free cash bucket, you can see from this slide that our free cash decreased from about 1.6 million to 813,000. It decreased about $800,000. Now that is not alarming. We had a significant amount of free cash last year still left over from the pandemic years when we were not spending a lot of our appropriation and able to use ARPA funds to offset those costs. Excuse me. For our size budget, around $800,000 in free cash on an annual basis is a healthy amount. So we're back to where we should be. Taking a deeper dive in the general fund revenue bucket, as I mentioned, it's comprised of property taxes, local revenues, and cherry sheet / state aid. Cherry sheet state aid funds, the $1.2 million colored yellow on this graph, is generally a pass-through. Not much of that money gets included in our operating expenses that we are appropriating on an annual basis. So truly, you want to look at how much our local revenues and our property taxes are going to increase. When you take those two green layers and add them together, our increase over last year is about $422,000. So from last year to the upcoming fiscal year, we only have an additional 420 something thousand dollars to spend on operating expenses. So as I mentioned, we request information from our department heads. We request their general fund needs and requests, as well as their free cash needs and requests. But on the general fund side, we start adding up what we are going to have to spend funds on next year. We look at employee contracts, which can be individual contracts. It can also be collective bargaining agreements. So we have the police, the fire, the DPW, the Johnson School. We look at school assessments, what we have to pay Swampscott and Essex Tech. We also look at special education, tuition and transportation. It's highlighted in yellow here because this is one of the items that we had to do a deeper dive on this year because of an unexpectedly high increase in these costs and because they have an alternative funding source in circuit breaker funds. Circuit breaker money allows us to be reimbursed for these costs up to 75% in tuition and I believe 50% in transportation. We also have insurance costs, health insurance and liability coverage. We have retirement benefits. We have our debt burden. How much do we owe in debt, principal, and interest in the upcoming year? And we have our department requests. What are their needs, wants, and any sort of annual adjustments? Annual adjustments would be sort of like a zero-based budgeting approach. If we look at what a department may have been appropriated last year, if it was for a a particular effort in that year, we will adjust the number down because that effort was accomplished in that given year. We're not going to build from that number. We're going to reduce it back to what the typical annual needs are of that department, and then evaluate what new needs or wants may be in front of us. So as we go through this list, if it adds up to more than the $16.1 million that we have to spend, then we have to take a closer look at potential alternative funding sources or adjustments. And as you can see here, when we received our budget needs and requests from our departments and from our committees, the total was $17.2 million. So if we had said, that's the total amount of requests that we received, clearly we had a $1.1 million gap. So we had to say no to a lot of things. We had to adjust a lot of things. We had to look for alternative funding sources. It was a very tight year. The two biggest impacts to this issue this year was, as I mentioned, a unexpected significant increase in special education costs. We had, I think, 5 new special education students that we didn't expect. Excuse me. And insurances, our health insurance, and this is a industry-wide issue. All communities are dealing with it, all providers. In a Nahant, we are seeing almost a 19% increase to our health insurance costs, which was added up to over $100,000 from the town in the upcoming year. So here's a list of a number of things that we had to either cut or not fund in the upcoming year. So we had about 21,000 various salary increases, which were consistent with a 2024 compensation study. That's challenging for us because we have a number of communities that are able to pay more than us that are relatively close to us, and this can lead to staffing issues where it's hard for the town of Nahant to compete with similar departments in other towns. We had $25,000 in a grant match account that we fund every year. We're had to cut that this year. Professional services and HR, we had to cut. There was a request for assessor part-time position and purchase of services that we were unable to do. As you can see, a number of different things. Police, fire, and school came to us and the finance committee and expressed deeply how important it would be for them to increase their staffing levels. They are all staffed at the minimum amounts, and it can lead to public safety concerns, or in the school, it can lead to services being underperformed. Luckily, both or all police, fire, and our school are doing very well. We have received exceptional reviews for the services that they are providing, but they're providing a very, very thin margins, and it's something that the town desperately needs to look further into in the upcoming years. We take a look at the free cash revenues. As I mentioned, we're about $800,000 less than last year. Our priorities for free cash has always been to fund stabilization, which is our town's savings account for operating expenses. So if we ever run into a economic crisis or downturn, we have that savings account that can help get us through those tough times for existing operating expenses. OPEB is other post-employment benefits. This is a liability on the town. We have to pay for employment benefits for our retirees. Both those two items, as I mentioned earlier, have a impact on the town's bond rating. So properly funding those, getting them to healthy levels is going to protect the town's bond rating. And as I mentioned before, it's similar to your personal credit score. The better the town's bond rating is, like your credit score, the better the interest rates we will receive when we go out to borrow. Our stabilization account is over $1 million at this point. It's at a very healthy place. We've been able to fund that over the last 6.5, 7 years. We have surpassed the 5% minimum that is recommended by the Division of Local Services. We're closer to about 7%. So it's in a healthy position. Excuse me. We also like to use free cash to pay debt above our minimum amount. And then, of course, any sort of capital needs and wants that we receive from our departments. When we received all of our requests this year, they totaled just over $1 million. And as you can see from this graph, we only had 800 something thousand dollars to use. So we had, what's in red here are things that we were unable to accomplish this year. As I mentioned, our stabilization account was in a healthy position, so we felt we were comfortable with not contributing to that this year. However, we still feel it's necessary to contribute to OPEB. And there were department capital needs that we have to accomplish in the upcoming year. Using free cash for those instead of borrowing saves the town money long-term on principal and interest borrowing costs. Unfortunately, we can't pay additional debt above our minimum, but we are paying what we owe in the current budget. And there were some desires or requests that were submitted to us that we were unable to fund. Here's a list of those things. We had a request for a fire squad car, Tudor beach railings, gazebo repairs, library capital needs. These three items total about $292,000. I will get into Article 5 later in the presentation that will help explain our creative way of being able to fund this, even though we didn't have the fund in our current fiscal year to do this. Some requests from the assessor, some capital needs along Nahant Road, Little League lighting, which is combined with a CPC article that was approved last year, and then of course stabilization that we typically fund at about $200,000. So the budget that's in front of you this year actually represents a decrease of almost $1 million compared to last year. A lot of these things we had to, just because it's a decrease doesn't mean that we are cutting all these services. There are things that we did have to cut from the budget, but there are a number of things that we were able to get creative and find alternative funding sources outside of the general budget. So we'll still be able to do them, but not funded through our general fund revenue bucket. And this has a bulleted list divided by category that explains the changes from last year to this year. As you can see, school had quite the increase because of the unexpected needs in special education costs, and insurance and benefits had a significant increase, as I mentioned before. Health insurance over $100,000 increase due to the industry-wide impact from health insurance costs. However, even after going through all of these requests and what we ended up deciding to fund and the creative solutions that we created, as you can see here, we were able to get almost every department in that 80 to 90% range of what they requested and to what was funded. So for almost every department, we were able to find a way to fund about 80 to 90% of what they wanted. So now I'm going to go through some of the important articles. I don't have all of the articles listed here, just for a matter of time and to keep things moving along. But certainly, if anyone has any questions about any of the articles, they can ask during these info sessions. They can ask during they can come see me during open office hours on the next two Fridays from 10 to noon, or they can just reach out to the town hall and send me an email at abarletta@nahant.org or schedule a time to sit down with me over the upcoming weeks. So the first article I want to talk about is Article 5. This is one of those articles that we had to get this is where I was talking about our free cash limitation, our general fund limitation, and some of the requests that we had over the upcoming year. So we had to get creative. How are we going to fund those things if we don't have the money today? We were able to find an alternative funding source for our water meter replacement project at zero cost to the town. We're now going to use MWRA's zero interest loan program, which will actually allow us to complete the project quicker and at no extra cost. In doing so, we can repurpose the funds that we approved for this project last town meeting, which was about $370,000. So with this article being approved, we'll be able to use $200,000 of that for the library capital improvement needs, 100,000 for water DPW capital need, and 70,000 for water and sewer capital needs in the operating budget. Article 19 is regarding the Coast Guard housing lots. In 2021, town meeting authorized the town to sell 12 vacant Coast Guard housing lots. And there were some restrictions included in the motion that was approved by town meeting. One of those restrictions was that the sale of these lots be conducted through two procurement offerings over a 2-year period. At this point, the town has completed 2 of those offerings, and we still have 2 more lots to sell. So in order to do that, we need authorization for additional offerings. This article will essentially eliminate the cap on the number of offers that the town is able to put on the street for sale, and extends the time out to July of 2029. We went with July of 2029 to basically go to the other side of town meeting in 2029. So just in case there's any unforeseen circumstances that delays the additional sales, the town can just go back to town meeting and ask for more time in May of 2029. They won't have to wait or hold some sort of special town meeting seeking that authorization. So as of today, I need to update this slide because as of Friday, actually afternoon, 10 lots. I'm sorry. Nope, this is up to date. The town has offered for sale 11 vacant lots. 9 have been sold. 1 is due to close tomorrow, and then 1 remains unsold. And then there's 1 more lot that is still occupied that we're working on. So once after town meeting, we can put the vacant lot up for sale, continue to work on getting the last lot vacated, and eventually putting that up for sale as well. Article 20 is in related to the Short Beach Dune hazard mitigation money that we received from the federal government, $4.8 million hazard mitigation grant. It's a 73% cost share from the federal government through the state at 3.5 million, with a 27% cost share from the town of 1.3. The town approved $500,000 two town meetings ago, which was helpful because it made our application more competitive through the process. And now we need the additional $805,000 to cover our total match. This project will fund a shoreline stabilization and restoration project at Short Beach to help prevent flooding. Extremely important, given that Nahant Road is our main thoroughfare in and out of town, especially in 2018 when the March storms occurred. The Little Nahant Neck between Little Nahant and the life-saving station was flooded, preventing our ability to get emergency vehicles in and out of town. So protecting Nahant Road is extremely important, not only to prevent storm damage, but to for public safety reasons during a storm. Article 21 and Article 22 are disabled veteran exemptions for real estate tax. These were made possible through the HERO Act, which was approved in 2024 by the legislature. Article 21 allows us to adjust real estate exemption for disabled veterans based off a COLA adjustment. And Article 22 will double the existing real estate tax exemption for disabled veterans. Excuse me. Article 23, community preservation. So once again, this year we have a number of great projects that were made possible by Community Preservation Act. Community preservation is funded through residents' tax base, in addition to the residential tax base, and then it's matched at 3%. I'm sorry. It's generated by a 3% of your tax bill is the calculation to determine how much each resident contributes. And then it's this year, the match from the state, I believe, is about 40%. The projects that have been approved by CPC for vote at town meeting are life-saving station roof replacement, roof replacement for Nahant Housing Authority properties, continued work at Bailey's Hill, the ecological restoration sponsored by the Open Space Committee, Pleasant Street playground improvements, Nahant Library capital improvements. Again, this is a mix between borrowing and free cash appropriation. This is remember I talked about Article 5, should it be approved, it allows us to use those funds towards partial of those funds towards this project. And the rest of these articles are pretty standard CPC articles, but I will mention Article 23H, which is paying off, retiring the bond. That $184,000 will eliminate that borrowing and pay off all of what's due in that 2019 library bond. And then lastly, Article 24 is related to accessory dwelling units. The planning board submitted an article to the Board of Selectmen, held a public hearing, had a number of meetings talking about how to approach this requirement. They've provided some edits to their own article that are included in the back of the Advisory and Finance Committee book in one of the appendices. They will sponsor a friendly amendment at town meeting. The changes are the result of feedback that the planning board received from the state after sending them a copy of the prepared article. This article will allow Nahant to be compliant with the Affordable Homes Act of 2024. The important thing to know is that if this article does not pass, ADUs are legal by right in the town of Nahant, even if we don't pass this article. The state law made that happen. The state law allows municipalities to pass a zoning bylaw that is curtailed to specific communities and what their needs and wants and desires might be. So they allow individual municipalities to reasonably regulate the law beyond what the state law does. So actually passing this article allows us to control how these ADUs will be rolled out in our community, specific to our community's needs. Some of the specifics included in the planning board's article is that only one ADU meeting the definition of a protected ADU will be allowed per parcel, and it can't be held in separate ownership of the principal dwelling. The protected ADU will not be allowed, or the principal dwelling, for that fact, will not be allowed to be rented on a short-term basis. The height is restricted to the same height that is permitted in the zoning district for a single-family dwelling, which is the most the town can restrict it by. And one additional off-street parking space will be required for the protected accessory dwelling unit. There are a couple other items in there, like requiring utilities to be connected through the principal dwelling, and a number of other Nahant-specific zoning requirements. And these things would not otherwise be allowed or protect. These things are not included in the state law. So passing this article will allow these things to go into play. Not passing this article will essentially allow the state law to take effect, which has very little reasonable regulation for the town of Nahant. So this is an important article, and happy to take any questions if there are any. Gene, I see that you're on. This is the last slide. Do you have any comments or questions? No, okay, so that concludes the informational session. For those of you watching at home, thank you for tuning in. I'll be doing this again next Monday night. As I mentioned, I have open office hours the next 2 Fridays from 10 to noon.
Tony,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Only thing I'd like to contribute is that to thank yourself and in particular the Finance and Advisory and Planning Boards for the work that they put, time and effort and work they put into this. It's amazing once you start to look at it and read through it and then discuss it, how involved it really becomes. It's a very important part of our town. So thank you again, and too bad we wouldn't have you here next year.
Well, thank you, Gene. Thank you for saying that. I mentioned it at the beginning. I hope that folks, when they go to town meeting, recognize how much work is put in the process. I'm talking in the beginning about how the process started back in December. And it's like a 8-week process of 4 night meetings a week, and the CPC, the planning board, the board of selectmen, the finance committee. There's a lot of different people that are involved, and A lot of dedicated folks volunteering their hours. So thank you for saying that. They should be applauded for all the work that they do.
Yes, definitely.
But
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
with that, we'll wrap it up. I think there's a Celtics game starting, so we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks.
Good
Have a
night,
good
all.